I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the town of Saugeen Shores and extend a welcome to everyone in this chambers this evening, the council chambers. The first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of your responsibility to do so, and you can do so now or when it arises on the agenda. None declared. This evening we have one deputation, and it's Kent Milroy, and he's here about the Saugeen Shores Community Watch. Welcome, Mr. Milroy.
Good enough, thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Saugeen Council. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this evening, and I hope that I can bring you some good news, maybe of some interest to you and the residents of Saugeen Shores. The Community Watch program has been in existence in this community for a number of years, I believe since 2002, and has quietly and almost surreptitiously gone about its business, keeping a watchful eye on the goings-on around town, providing another avenue to enhance the safety and the security of our town. In recent years, there's been some erosion of the program due to various factors, and I'm here tonight to report to you on the revitalization and the reorganization of this vital service. This group has been under the careful stewardship, pardon me, I'm not used to coming out in the rain. This group has been under the careful stewardship of Joe Schultz for the past 10 years, and during that time, Joe and the volunteer members have faithfully met their mandate of providing security to our community. Last year, regretfully, Joe found that he was unable to continue his involvement with Community Watch and has stepped aside. And at the request of Chief Rivet, I stepped up and was silly enough to say I would take this on. Thank you. Thank you. The Community Watch Group is made up of volunteers who give of their time, generally on weekend evenings, to provide our police service with another couple of sets of eyes and ears on active weekends, particularly during the busy vacation months. These volunteers are provided support by the police service and patrol the community in their own unmarked vehicles for a minimum of 2 hours each shift, keeping an eye on their surroundings. This program, which is a community program supported by the police service, is intended to broaden the scope of patrol that our officers are capable of providing. On busy evenings, our police staff can be very busy responding to incidents and is sometimes barely able to keep ahead of the, to fill that gap by, to keep ahead of the incidents that require their attention. Our volunteers can fill that gap by patrolling in areas where they are aware that the police presence is thin or non-existent at the time. Our volunteers have communication with police dispatch by cell phone. They are always in safe contact with the dispatcher while they are on the road and engaged in their duties. They also carry a police portable radio that is intended not for their communication, but simply to provide them with the knowledge of the whereabouts of the police units, thus allowing them to patrol in areas that might not be receiving direct police service at the time. By shifting their patrols to the quiet zones, if you will, of the municipality, it allows the officers to concentrate on matters that only they can address. By doing this, neighborhoods that might not have an officer present still have an acceptable level of surveillance by our volunteers, with the ability to have an officer dispatched immediately when required. It needs to be emphasized that there is no law enforcement function tied to this program whatsoever. Our volunteers are instructed to never leave their vehicle, to not have direct contact with the public, and to immediately use their method of communication to summon an officer to an incident. Our volunteers are carefully selected, screened, and trained for their duties, and we carefully avoid persons who might overstep the boundaries of the parameters of Community Watch. We tolerate no deviation from this policy, thus avoiding any conflict with the public. In the past year, we have managed to augment the existing program by adding 5 new volunteers to bolster our staffing. After making a number of presentations at our local service clubs and making known our needs through the press, we have had real success in adding 5 new people in the last month, and we are grateful for their willingness to participate with us. This program has, up until this point, been focused pretty much entirely on the patrol function of Community Watch. While this is and will continue to be the prime focus for the group, there are many more allied avenues that could be developed. Within this program lies the potential for so much more. This program can serve as a launching pad for other safety and security initiatives such as Neighborhood Watch, business security, business premises security, managing a block watch structure perhaps, a visible anti-shoplifting presence, a handicap parking monitoring initiative, and good neighbor and safe home programs are prime examples of what is possible. We have the potential to engage and encourage our citizens and the business community in becoming more responsible for their own safety and security. We intend to partner with organizations like the Business Improvement Areas, the Chamber of Commerce, and others to enable these programs to become established. When these various initiatives flourish, they can accomplish a great deal. Until now, the profile of the Community Watch program has been intentionally kept under the radar, if you will. In fact, when we were engaging community groups for recruitment, most people were totally unaware that this program even existed. My intention is to reverse that stance and to let everybody, legal or illegal, know that people are watching. The residents who live here deserve all the protection that our police service can provide, however that might be accomplished. The Community Watch's program's only aim is to support that. In this day and age of shrinking municipal budgets and increased expectations, citizens need to step up to the plate and offer solutions. Community Watch is one manner in which a volunteer organization can supplement and bolster vital community resources, in this case significantly impacting public safety, not to mention augmenting the police services budget. As a council, you will be aware of the AMO's just released Policing Modernization Report entitled Building a New Safety Model in Ontario, Public Safety Model in Ontario. This report, 44 pages long, strongly hints towards significant change that would allow other community partners to share in the responsibility of providing certain services within the framework of the greater law enforcement structure. With the constantly rising costs of providing policing in mind, the report advocates allowing civilian participation in completing tasks not necessarily requiring the involvement of higher-cost sworn officers. This will require a complete cultural change within policing circles, as well as changes to the legislation that supports it. But it is proving worthwhile in other jurisdictions where significant benefit, both in cost containment and in enhanced citizen involvement, is concerned. In this established program, we here in Saugeen Shores have a worthwhile patrol program that operates productively. But we also have the basis for expansion to accomplish so much more. We are mindful of the need for confidentiality and safety and security, of our volunteers, but the program itself can be heavily promoted and put forward as another sure method to secure our town and the incredible quality of life of those who live here and are so fortunate to enjoy every day. What would we require of council, and what can council do for us? Well, you'll be pretty pleased to know that we don't require much from you at all. We would, in the interest of raising this important program's profile, ask that a minimum amount of appropriate signage be allowed. That would be you. Thank you there. Where we would like to have these erected, of course, where they would do the most good. The public, and more importantly, the potential criminal element, needs to know that this program is in effect. The higher the profile, the better the results. Community Watch happily requires very little funding, so we don't need your money. In fact, a donut and a coffee is all that each volunteer requires of you per shift. And I think Rivet's been paying for that himself, actually. But we do need the moral support and the goodwill of town council and staff to make it work. And Chief Rivet has been the moving force behind the Community Watch, and he has moved mountains to ensure its relevance. As well, we've had amiable discussions with Stuart Doyle about our needs, and we really appreciate his interest in his efforts for our program. Both these gentlemen are integral to the continued success of Community Watch. The police personnel are all united in their respect for and their appreciation of Community Watch program as well. As a group of dedicated and invested citizen volunteers, the Community Watch Group stands ready to support any further initiatives that might be of benefit to the people of Saugeen Shores. I hope I've been able to shed some light on this program for you and the potential that it holds for our community. Again, many thanks for the opportunity to bring this program before Council.
Thanks very much, Kent. I'm going to open up to committee, and I'll start here with Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Mr. Milroy, thanks very much for the introduction to this program. I personally, until I read your deputation, was not aware of how extensive the program is, so I want to thank you for that. And as a member of the Police Services Board, over the past 6 months or so, I've also been made more keenly aware of the costs associated with policing and the frequency and types of crimes that are taking place in our community, which weren't necessarily readily apparent to myself, and I'm sure to most regular citizens. So to have an organization like the Community Watch program that we have, I think is a wonderful thing, and it augments the police force that is not at sometimes the daily forces and at the middle of the night and through the evenings, that they're spread pretty thin, and they're having to respond sometimes at a drop of a hat. So I want to thank you for that, and
thank you.
As far as moral support and appreciation, you've got all of it that you need from me.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Dave. Thank you.
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for Mr. Milroy, which perhaps might go across to the Director of Public Works. The signs that you're speaking about, does Community Watch have funds available to purchase those kinds of signs?
We right now we have in our possession 12 dozen signs. We started with 6 last year. We didn't get around to getting them up. We talked to Mr. Doyle, and he suggested we get some that he could see. We brought them to him. In the meantime, short answer to a long question, or long answer to a short question, we have 12 now. Okay.
The reason why I asked that was that, as a matter of fact, last night I noticed that as Division Street curves on to Tyendinaga in Southampton, there's an extremely old neighborhood watch sign there.
Right.
That I actually wrote it down as, got to make a comment that maybe we should go around and take these down. So I would just, over to Mr. Doyle, ask, do we have a sense of where those old neighborhood watch signs are that perhaps as a starting point, if there's 5 or 6 of them that are real faded, that might be a good location to put up some of these new signs. Do you have a sense of how many of them are still out there?
No, I don't. Some of those, obviously, we're aware of 1 or 2, but we do have the 6 signs from the group, and we've identified where they're going to go. So the plan was after this evening, if there was support, that the Public Works staff would go put the new ones up.
Just as a follow-up, if that one at Division in Tyendinaga isn't on the list, can you just go take it down? It looks really sad.
It's on my new list.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Kent, for coming and doing the presentation tonight. It's important, I think, for Council to know that Community Watch obviously serves an important function around the community, as Kent laid out, but it also serves a role as sort of being a bit of a built-in volunteer force for the police service to do various functions, like, for example, our most recent business plan that was completed last year, I guess, we would not have been able to do all of the community outreach that we did without the help of Community Watch volunteers, and Kent in particular. And so I think all these things, these programs run along, and like the police service, and we talk about the formal element of them, and then the expenditure that we have to do that. But it's also, they're also supported by so many people who aren't paid, and who just do it because they want to serve the community, and Community Watch volunteers or people like that. So in this forum, I just wanted to say thank you to all those volunteers for all of the different kinds of work you do to support our police service. We could not run it the way we do without that support. And the other thing I will say is, with regard to the signage, there are some areas, and we saw that earlier this spring with all of the rash of break-ins that we had in our trailer parks, our own municipal trailer parks. A program like Community Watch, if it's present in the community with signage, may be something that could act as a deterrent. So I guess, and I know you're already doing this, and I just say it out loud, that working with the police service, working with the chief to decide where those areas are, where they could be most effective as a deterrent, would be ideal, and I look forward to seeing them up in those areas. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? No?
Could I just make one comment, Mr. Mayor? We are keenly aware of sign pollution. Don't want any extraneous signs so that we can help, but this is a program that needs to have the profile lifted, both within the community and, frankly, people that are coming into the community. So that's where we're coming from. These signs, by the way, are, I think they're $50 a piece. Not a big deal.
Thanks very much, Ken. I think you can probably get Stuart to put them up as soon as he's available, or as soon as he is. Thanks, Ken. The next item on the agenda then is a report of municipal officers or committee, and it's a staff report on the 2014 financial statements. And our Deputy Treasurer Sue Dent will start off, I believe. And go ahead, Sue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Municipalities are required to prepare consolidated financial statements on an annual basis. It's also required that an independent licensed public accountant express an opinion on these statements based on the results of their audit. This year, our accumulated surplus increased by $141,000 to approximately $163.3 million. Michael Bolton from BDO Dunwoody is here this evening to present to you the draft 2014 financial statements.
Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Worship, members of council. Good evening. I must have been doing this a while. I noticed I was interested with the firm with BDO Dunwoody. We haven't been Dunwoody for about 5 years, so I'll get you an update for next year. Thank you. I'm going to go through the financial statements that were sent out as part of the council package, but before that, I thought I would just talk about our role as auditors and some of the statutory things that I need to do as part of our reporting to council. The first one is about auditor independence. So one of the hallmarks of the auditing profession is we are required to be independent from our clients when we do audits. So we're not supposed to have any financial interest. It doesn't apply to municipality, but no investment in our clients. Don't hold a position within the client of any responsibility. So I don't hold any committee positions, anything like that. None of my family works for the municipality. My son, who works down at the harbor, is assistant harbor master, but he doesn't influence any of the day-to-day decisions. So I can assure you that I'm independent in performing our audit. The other thing about an audit is it's not a guarantee of the accuracy of the financial statement. We audit to something called materiality. So we look at a percentage of your gross revenue, and we say if there was an error, in this case of plus or minus $500,000 that we use in materiality, that would influence your decision on the financial statements that I'm going to present. And the $500,000 is about 2% of your own use revenues. And that's been standard across the auditing profession for a number of years, and would be your materiality would be comparable to other municipalities of your size. I mentioned that the financial statements are done to a degree of accuracy called materiality. So there are errors in the financial statement. The ones that we identified totaled $42,000. Materiality was $500,000, and we identified errors of $42,000. So it's nowhere near the materiality number that we would ask management to make adjustments for. So that's a very small number in relation to materiality. And I think that's probably the end of sort of the audit part of it. I'll now go into the financial statements that were presented. Sent out, sorry. I'll talk about the auditor's report, which is on page number 4 of what was sent out. And these financial statements are what are called consolidated financial statements. So you have an investment in some entities, and the results of those entities are added in with the town finances to produce this financial statement. So your share of the Basra income and expenses is included in here. Your share of SMART income and expenses is included in here, but not your share of West Ontario Power. It's a different kind of entity. Those other two are joint boards, as opposed to West Ontario, which is a separate board of directors, separate governance schedule. What is included in here is the interest in the dividends you receive from West Ontario, but not the actual results of West Ontario. The financial statements that you have are prepared in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. Those are a unique set of accounting standards that apply to all levels of government, from federal to lower tier. They're unique in how they're done in terms of reserves and reserve funds, and some of the items that are included in there, such as landfill liabilities, etc. Those are different than the local hardware store. So you couldn't compare these to the local hardware store financial statements. Auditors express an opinion. I mentioned before, we don't give a guarantee as to the result of our work. We don't look at 100% of the transactions that occur in the municipality over the course of the year. That would be too time-consuming. So we select a sample based on our materiality. And from that sample of transactions that we look at, we give an opinion about whether these financial statements are in accordance with those accounting principles that I spoke of earlier. And what you have is the two-page audit report. It's called a clean audit report. We didn't have any trouble in completing our audit. In our opinion, the consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the town as of December 31st, 2014, and the results of its operations in accordance with the Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards. So that's a little bit about auditors and what we're going to be talking about. On page number 6, it's entitled the Consolidated Statement of Financial Position. So that would be a balance sheet if you were a for-profit organization. It lists the assets and the liabilities of the town at the end of December, which is your year end. I'm not going to talk about all the numbers on there. I'm going to talk about some of the ones that I believe would be of interest to council. The first one is your taxes receivable are just over $1.2 million, which represents about 4.7% of the current levy. A year ago, it was just short of $1.2 million, and that represented 4.8 of that year's levy. So you're kind of ahead of collections as to where you were the same point last year. The long-term investment that appears there at $7.6 million, that represents the cost of your investment in Westario. It doesn't change year to year. We don't try and increase it or decrease it based on what the estimated value of that would be. It's strictly the cost of that investment when it was acquired, which represents some notes owing to the municipality that bear interest, as well as some common shares in Westario Power. On the liability side, by far your biggest liability is some long-term debt. I'm going to talk about that a little later on when we get to note number 6. And there are a couple of significant estimates that I'd like to bring to your attention. One of the accounting principles that's required is that the estimated liability for closing and post-closure costs of your landfill sites is estimated and it's recorded as liability. That's about $184,000. And post-employment benefits, you've made some promises to your current and past employees that you will continue to pay their health and dental benefits up till the time that they reach mandatory retirement age. So that's valued on an annual basis, and the estimated cost of that, estimated liability for that is $785,000, which is roughly the same as what it was last year. Neither of those are funded on a current basis. Those will be funded out of future tax levies. One of the changes that happened in the accounting for municipalities in 2009 was you were required to do an inventory of your capital assets, put a value on those, and depreciate them over time. So by far the biggest asset that shows up on your statement of financial position is your investment in tangible capital assets of $158 million. So that's not something you can spend. It's shown as a non-financial asset, but is by far the biggest investment that the municipality has made. So your accumulated surplus, as was mentioned before, is about $163 million, which was virtually unchanged from what it was a year ago. I'll talk on page number 7. Page 7 is the statement of operations and accumulated surplus. It's the list of various kinds of revenues that are generated, from taxation to grants to other kinds of revenue, and then your expenses, protection, transportation, environmental. I'll highlight some of the numbers that have changed quite a bit, and I'll maybe talk about the annual surplus as well. The revenue number a year ago was $27.5 million. This year it's about $26 million, so it's declined about $1.5 million. If you look at the line entitled Other Revenue, referencing note number 10, a year ago there was an assumed subdivision, and as you assume a asset, you account that as revenue, and you put it on your books as one of your tangible capital assets. So a year ago, included in that other income number of $5.3 million was about $2.5 million in this assumed subdivision. Again, it's an unbudgeted item, not something that you actually received cash for. In fact, you now have a responsibility to look after something because you've received that revenue. The annual surplus this year only went up by $115,000. Other municipalities are actually going backwards, I'll say. not able to cover their current expenses with their revenue. That's a reflection of the less amount of revenue you're receiving from other levels of government, but still having to provide the same services. So your annual surplus is only $115,000. Last year was about $2.3 million. Again, you assumed a subdivision that's included in that 2.3. So again, you haven't made a lot of headway in terms of replenishing reserves, and I'm going to talk about reserves when you get on a couple pages. I'm going to skip a bunch of pages. They're required to be there as part of the accounting principles that you follow, but I'm not going to talk about them in depth. But I thought it would be interesting for council to take a look on page 16, which is into the notes to the financial statement. On page 16, there's a note entitled Number 6, Long-Term Debt. I'm not going to go through each one, other than to show you that a year ago, your long-term debt was about $14 million. You paid off about $1 million in long-term debt this year, so it's now just over $13 million in long-term debt, and there was no new loans taken out in 2014. And your annual schedule of repayments for roughly the next 5 years are about $1 million a year in principal payments on those debts. Next, I'll go to page number 18. And page 18, there's two notes there that I want to speak to. The first one is note number 8, entitled The Accumulated Surplus. So I talked on the Statement of Financial Position that your accumulated surplus is $163 million, which sounds like a really big number. But invested in tangible capital assets is $158 million. So the difference between 163 and 158 is about $5 million. So if you were to go out and pay out all your long-term debt today, you'd only have $5 million left in the bank. You're not going to pay off all your long-term debt because there's a regular scheduled payment, but you're ahead by about $5 million in terms of stuff you could spend if you needed to spend it. Part of that $5 million, I talked about Westero before, so $7.6 million is your investment in Westero, maybe the not most liquid investment that you could have, but so of that $5 million, 7.6 is in Westero, and you're actually short, I guess, a couple $1 million if you want to do the analysis that way. Note number 9, the reserves. I generally get a question about reserves. So this lists the kinds of reserves that the municipality has, and they declined this year from $19.3 million to $18.6 million. So you've eaten into your reserves by $700,000 during the 2014 year to do the things that you needed to do the municipality. I thought I'd go back a few years just to give you an idea of the trend of that number. So in the year 2010, your reserves and reserve funds were at $15 million. They increased in 2011 by $2 million up to 17.2. They increased further in 2012 by another $2.3 million to 19.4. In 2013, they were flat at roughly 19.4, and then you chewed up about $700,000 in reserves. So, this is the first year we've had a decline in the value of reserves. Not saying that that's right or that's wrong, just an observation that this was 2014 was the first year you had to dip into reserves to carry on with the works that were done in the municipality. I'll next go to page number 20. And I said that included in the results in the consolidated financial statements were a couple of joint boards that you belong to, one being Saugeen Mobility and Regional Transport, or SMART, and the other one being BASRA, or Bruce Area Recycling. I'll talk about Bruce Area Recycling first. It's in the right-hand column there in note number 12 on page 20. It's in good financial health. It's got about $2.3 million difference between assets and liabilities. Lots of reserves there. Tends to throw off positive income every year. Not so with SMART. Its financial assets were about $228,000, and its liabilities were $260,000. So it's actually in a deficit position in terms of its net financial position of $31,000. And that's a reflection of it costs more to run that operation than what it generates in fees from its users. So the municipalities have to fund that. And so as Saugeen Shores shares a larger portion of that with increased ridership, you're going to be responsible for more of that deficit on an annual basis. So It's not a big number, only 31,000, certainly nowhere near the materiality number I talked about before, but is a reflection of the need that's probably going to need some more money at some point, and that doesn't include replacing vehicles in the future or anything. That's just talking about what's in the bank account. And I think the last item I'll talk to is on page number 22, note number 14. At the beginning of the year, the municipality strikes a budget, and the left-hand column in note number 14 on page 22 is the result of that budget that was struck, essentially a zero budget. What happened in 2014 is the middle column, and the numbers are there for you to look at. We talked before that your reserve had to be depleted by $700,000 to get back to a zero budget number. That's all I wanted to point out, is you did have a zero budget, but only by dipping into reserves for the year. Mr. Mayor, that's the end of my formal remarks. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thanks very much, Mike. Any questions for Mr. Bolton? Comments? Councillor Mike Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, just to do with the future capital reserve, you talked about 2010, 15 million, and you did a 5-year brief report there. We dropped down to we're up to 18.6, which is a drop from 700,000 from the year before. And you said that's really not that concerning, but we did take a drop for the first time in a few years. I'm just wondering, with the accumulated surplus of 163 million, I think we increased by $141,000, you stated, and I'm just wondering. And maybe this is a question of CAO through to the treasurer, perhaps, so one of the other could speak to it. But I'm just wondering, over the 5-year history, like Mike has outlined, with the future capital reserves dropping by 700 this year, 700,000. What kind of a trend are we seeing with the $141,000 accumulated surplus for 2014? Is that, Larry, high or low compared to other years? May I request a report that may outline to us over the last 5 years how we have fared with our accumulated surplus? Is that something that could be requested of the treasurer, perhaps, for a future meeting? And how are we doing, Larry, or have you taken a look at that number?
Through Mr. Mayor, I think Sue has a bit of information on that topic that might be generally what you're looking for, but we can get more information if necessary.
Okay.
Is that okay, Mike? You need something?
Yeah, unless Susan, you
just a little bit of information, just so that you're aware. The decrease in the future capital projects reserve this year was largely due to the fact that we self-funded both the water meter installation program and the LED street lighting program. So that was a total of $1.6 million that did come out of future capital projects in 2014. Both of those are scheduled to be repaid to the future capital projects reserve over a number of years. So that money will come back to us, but that really is the big decrease in the future capital projects reserve last year.
Thank you, Susan. The only other question I had, Mr. Mayor, was, and maybe Mike can answer this question, but when we talk about a long-term debt of $13 million, I'm not sure that should be as concerning as maybe what some members of the public may think. It's a large number for long-term debt, but I'm just wondering what portion of that $13 million is actually paid back through user fees, if any. Like, I'm talking about water, sewer. What part of the $13 million is actually can be attributed to water, sewer charges, repayments?
I'm afraid I don't have that information with me, but I understand. Yes,
it's fair to say that the $13 million debt isn't perhaps as it's a big number, but I don't. It's not that we're in a serious financial crisis here.
Right. Yeah, and municipalities have a calculated amount, a borrowing limit that's set by the province, and my understanding is you're nowhere near your borrowing limit, and can make the annual payments of $1 million a year that I said on here. I don't see that being a problem.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mike. I actually had a question to follow up on an email that I sent and that you replied to. I thought it might be useful for everybody in council to hear about this. My concern is actually on note number 1, which is on page 14, which is talking about the fact that we have funds held at CIBC and that the CDIC insures up to a maximum of $100,000 per depositor per financial institution. The reply I got was that my hypothetical question was, if the bank fails, is there some way for us to get more than the $100,000 that's guaranteed? And the answer was, there's not necessarily any kind of guarantee. So I guess what I'm asking is, and I know that your response was it's unlikely that that would happen, very unlikely, but I wondered if there are other options for us and what the rationale is for us to have all of that money in one institution. Sure. Thank you.
Yep, I can speak to that a little bit, and staff may have a response as well. But the point is, on note number 1, there's about $10 million at a Schedule 1 bank, CIBC, that was mentioned. So each depositor only has $100,000 of coverage under Canadian deposit insurance. In theory, if the CIBC were to go under tomorrow, your $10 million would be gone and you get a $100,000 check from the government. The only way to mitigate that would be to have no more than $100,000 in any one institution, which with $10 million isn't practical. And you can't have multiple accounts and have each one insured for $100,000. It's per institution, per depositor. And the rationale for having it there is just ease of management. If you had $1 million in 10 different places, it would be difficult to manage your cash flow on a monthly basis. Your accounts payable, I didn't mention this, but your accounts payable at the end of December are about $3 million. So in theory, in the 60 days after year end, you'll be writing checks for $3 million that you'd have to sort of gather all that money up in one place and write the check. So from a management point of view or a logistics point of view, it'd be very difficult to manage that. Would be my response, if staff has other comments, but that would be my response as to why it's all in one place. And you do go through a tendering process for your banking as well.
I could just follow up quickly. I did a little bit of reading on it, and I don't know if this applies in Ontario, but the reading I indicated that there are other, like in Manitoba, I think it was their credit union system is exempt. They don't have that $100,000 limit. So I just wondered if there are other options for us to explore, or even if staff would consider the possibility of dividing it up into maybe 2 or...
I can speak to the credit union one. I know that in Ontario, credit unions don't have CIDC insurance. They're not covered under the insurance. So they have their own plan that the credit unions have set up with the same $100,000 limit. So there is some type of insurance, but the cap's the same. I'll leave the rest of the comments for staff in terms of managing that.
Some other questions? Councillor Grace.
So I wondered if it would be possible for us to get a report or some kind of reply on other options than just everything in one bank, all the eggs in one basket.
Mr. Mayor, yes, I think we're looking at our investment policy concurrently, and we can take that into consideration as we review it.
No other questions? Thanks very much, Mike. So there's a recommendation, and I'll read the recommendation. It's that the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores accepts the 2014 annual audited financial statements as presented by Michael Bolton of BDO Dunwoody. BDO. Even I should know that. Leave that Dunwoody off. Any further questions? All in favor? That's carried then. The next item on the agenda is a staff report, and it has to do with the aquatics review process and the results and recommendation, and our CAO, Larry Allison, will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to a resolution passed by Council in January and a follow-up report endorsed in March, staff have retained MHPM project managers to undertake a update of the pool-related material. In accordance with the process outlined, a working group of community members with a cross-sections of perspectives were engaged to assist staff, Deputy Mayor Charbonneau and Councillor Rich with the undertaking. As noted in the previous report to committee, the work involved updating all the empirical data in the previous documentation, synthesizing the information, and producing a review and a recommendation with respect to the best course of action, taking capital, operating, and debt capacity factors into consideration. Staff committed to have the report produced in a timely fashion. So attached to this report for your consideration this evening is the analysis undertaken by MHPM. The document was received in draft form in early June, vetted by the working group, and changed in response to feedback received. The final report dated June 16th provides a number of recommendations focused around putting the town in a position to be ready to submit a shovel-ready grant application for a 2-tank aquatic addition to the existing Plex when such grant opportunities become available in the future. The analysis and rationale in support of the recommendation, together with a number of other suggestions related to downscaling and refining the overall scope of the proposed project, are set out in the report. In addition, the approximate fiscal impact to the town from both a debt management and a taxpayer perspective are clearly quantified within the document. We point out the recommendation essentially mirrors the recommendations put forward by staff in 2011 as part of the overall budget process that year. However, since that time, additional commitments to sustaining ongoing operations at Centennial Pool have occurred, making it much more feasible to continue core programming at that facility for the foreseeable future. If a commitment to the recommended course of action is obtained from Council this evening, in addition to the preliminary planning to be undertaken by the town as noted, the stakeholders should be encouraged to form a framework for a future fundraising committee, which will be quite necessary to assist the town in implementing this significant fiscal expenditure. A recent visioning session conducted by Council identified the upgrade, renovation, or relocation of the Centennial Pool as one of the top 10 priority projects for this Council term. Favorable consideration of the recommendations in this report would align with Council's expressed desire to make progress on this important issue. Mr. John Alley, the author of the report, is actually in attendance with us this evening to respond to any specific questions members of Council may have, and we point out that this part of the project will be completed on budget.
Thank you, Larry. Then I'll read the recommendation and then we'll get some discussion, I'm sure. Then the recommendation is the Council identify the addition of a new 2-tank aquatics facility to the existing Plex as a preferred long-term option to maintain aquatics programming in the town of Saugeen Shores. 2, the Council consider adding sufficient funds to the 2016 capital budget to undertake enough program development and preliminary schematic design so as to be shovel-ready in the event that programs become available in the future years. To make a complete application for grant funding that would defray at least 2/3 of the approximate $12 to $13 million current estimated capital cost of this undertaking. 3, that the future updates to the town's long-term debt policy take into consideration the potential allocation of up to $4.5 million of available tax-funded debt room to be used for this purpose. And 4, that in the interim, staff consider to continue to sustain current operations at Centennial Pool with the objective of continuing the aquatics program at that facility until such time as the construction of a new center becomes financially feasible and construction occurs. Comments, questions? Councillor Grace.
Mr. Mayor, I will be voting in favor of this recommendation. There are many reasons that I would support this, but just a couple. The report shows that we have a rapidly increasing senior population. I think this is part of a sound economic development plan because I think it's important for us to offer services, and I see this as a service to complement our growing senior population. I have spoken to parents and grandparents who are concerned about continuing to provide an opportunity for their children long-term and future generations to learn how to swim. Swimming is an essential life skill in our community, given the fact that we're on a Great Lake. And we don't offer lessons at the lake anymore. and I understand why, but I don't think we should assume that families will always have the opportunity and money to be able to go to Owen Sound or to Hanover to participate in swimming lessons. I recently spoke with a parent whose 9-year-old son just participated in the Swim to Survive program that the Director of Community Services described, and she was very grateful that he had this opportunity, and I want to try to do what we can to support those continued opportunities. So I'll say enough. I'll finish what my comments are, because I'm sure there are a lot of people with comments, but those are a couple of the reasons why I'm supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I will be also supporting this resolution, and I'd like to point out the good work that was done by the members, both of the public and the councillors that were involved. In preparing this report, I think it's a very balanced approach. I think it's taken into account a lot of the issues and the divisiveness that this has the potential to create in the community, and because it's an expensive project and there's a lot of different opinions. I think that it's taken a prudent approach to getting a shovel-ready project. I hope we're not too late with the shovel-ready project, because as we all know, the financial or the federal situation with elections going on this fall, that it's more than likely a time when grants and things come out is prior to an election. But nonetheless, we will have something in place, and we'll have a plan ready so that if and when future funding comes available. And I also really appreciate the statement in there that talks about generating or creating a fundraising committee so that members of the community, of which we have many in attendance today, can also get behind this and do all the necessary things to raise the funds and make this a reality for our community for all the reasons that were spoke of previously.
Councillor Rich.
Thank you. I think most of the people are here for the procedural bylaw, Dave. I think that'll probably be a lot more interesting. We've already spent over $100,000 in consultants, and money well spent. Now what we have to do is figure out what we're going to do going forward. I think that this makes a very clear recommendation. I think it is fiscally prudent. I think that it's good to continue to try and attract retirees to the community. A second tank is going to make a big difference with regard to that. It is $71 a household with 2/3 funding, and I think we have to make sure that we're shovel ready and don't miss out on any opportunities that are going to exist in the future. It's well within our debt capacity, and I think that as a group we want to help build healthy communities, and I think that services like aquatic centers are a big part of that. So that's why I'll be supporting it tonight, and thank you.
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really important that the message that goes out, though, includes the component parts of the recommendation. It does not say that a new pool is about to be built. It says that we'll create some plans, much like Southampton did quite a long time ago with a plan for sewers at the north end of Southampton, and it took a long time to get to that, but we were ready at the time, and so that's what this is saying. It's also saying that grant funding up to 2/3, which is $12 to $13 million, that's part of this. So I can be supportive of this as well, but this is contingent upon a whole lot of other things happening, and we just need to be clear about that, because it could be an awfully long time before some of these component parts come into play. And I don't think we've necessarily missed the boat on grant funding, because I don't think there's been a grant funding opportunity that this would have fit into in the last little while. So I think it's coming. I don't know if it'll be 3 years, 4 years, or 10 years out, but at some point the provincial or the federal government will realize that it's about time to inject some funds into this kind of stuff again. I would be very curious to keep updating the numbers, though, because I think $4.5 million of debt, we may be able to accommodate it, but at the same time, for the actual usership of any potential future facility, the numbers are quite small. And so as a council, we'll have to, we won't necessarily, if it's in the future, they'll have to wrestle with, how to balance things off. And I would welcome also the beginnings of a fundraising effort, but I don't think we should, imply that this is in the very near future, because I can't remember how many years the Southampton project took, but we were ready at the time, and boom, 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 within 2 years we had all of those sewer installations in there. But that was a Southampton plan. That was well before amalgamation. So, this is, I'm glad that there's a report. I'm glad that there's recommendations, but it certainly just is setting the stage for some other things that require some other levels of government to help us out. So the fight's not over yet. And also there's a fundraising component in there that, quite frankly, I don't know if the community will have the capacity for $500,000 to $1 million in the next little while, given we've just gone through and we're still involved in a big hospital campaign. So certainly, it's a supportive document in terms of there's a result here, and there's something that, we can start chipping away at component parts of it. But this does not mean that a pool will be added onto the Plex in the next couple of years. It's going to take a number of other things happening to get to that point. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I can echo some of that and speak to some other things as well. And the 2/3, we're not asking for anything different than any other municipality has received for a project of this magnitude, and I think that the user numbers are well in the range of every other municipality that owns and operates a pool or arena. We can recover 50% of the cost through user fees, and that's a good thing. So the opportunity for us is the good news story is that we've made a decision as to where it should go, and I'm in full support of that. We will need political pressure if the public wants to help us. Somebody's going to have to squeeze somebody to get that 2/3 coming our way, and I'm sure we're going to work on it. And for me, 5 to 10 years, I've already got a lot of white and gray going on, and I might want to use that new facility. I can use the old facility too, but the water is a little cooler, so I'm going to have to get my own hot tub for a while, I think. But I'm really concerned about fundraising, and I don't think that we should be asking people to jump on a fundraising committee too soon. It tires people out, it tires the volunteers out, and I think it needs to be for a pointed reason. I don't think it needs to be set up for a 5 to 10 year venture, and they're going to struggle because we're not there for whatever reason. So I would really hope that we could strike another committee to discuss how to engage a fundraising committee and what the fundraising committee should be expected to do. And I do agree with the Vice Deputy Mayor that our hospital emergency room, for me, it comes first. So let's close out that fundraising opportunity. And we have failed in the community to reach the fundraising goals. They're usually too high, and we need to be realistic. So I hope that we can get a committee for that. The existing pool, what I didn't see in the document was it speaks to closing it out, and there's a cost associated with it. My understanding still is, and I would like to explore this, Mr. Mayor, I'd like you to explore it if you can with the education authorities and find out if there's an opportunity for that to be used for something else. My information says that the grade 7 and 8s that may end up at the high school could need a second gymnasium facility with change rooms. And so if there's an opportunity there, we should explore it. And I'm surprised it didn't mention it in the report, but maybe I understand why. Thank you.
Any further comments? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what's been said around the table, and obviously I will be supporting the recommendation. I just think it's the reason why we put this on the table in January was a recognition, I think, around the table that we needed an understanding of what the direction on this file was going to be into the future, into the very long term, beyond the life of the Centennial Pool. And I think that this gives us a sense of what that is. The Vice Deputy Mayor is absolutely correct in her comments that this is not a short-term, necessarily at least, a short-term thing. We will require, the report makes it clear, we will require in and around $8.5 million from outside sources, whatever those sources might be. And the last time we really saw money flow like that was in the MIII funding, or the funding related to the Economic Action Plan, the bailout money. What's the term I'm looking for? I can't remember anyway. But in 2009, during the financial crisis, when the government stimulus, that's the word I'm looking for, the stimulus funding, that was the last time with the Southampton Sewer Project we saw that kind of money flow. So it doesn't flow all the time. I'm certain it will happen again. And so this is going to have us ready for that. But the most important thing is for us to provide some certainty to our own staff, to our own planning, to the entire community as to what the direction is going to be. And this tells us maintain the Centennial Pool for at least 10 more years. Make sure that it continues to be able to operate for 10 more years, so that during the interim we can do the designs and prepare so that if hopefully sometime during that 10 years the money comes available, that $8.6 million becomes available, that we can do this project. And it requires of us, and it's important to be very clear, it requires of us to be prepared to commit that when that funding opportunity becomes available, that this is what we're going to do. This is the project we're going to choose. Because invariably there will be an array of options available. There will be a whole series of infrastructure projects. Remember, the number one priority that Council identified during its visiting session was the Gobles Grove project in the south end of Port Elgin. So I'm prepared to say that this will be the project that I will support if that money comes available. And I think that is that's really the decision we're sort of making and setting up here, is to say this is the priority. This is the thing we're going to do. And so that's the position I'm taking, and I'll be supporting the resolution with that knowledge at the top of my mind. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mike Wyatt.
Yeah, I'm very pleased. This is actually coming before council. It's been about 7-8 years we've been talking about about a new pool for this community. I will be supporting the motion. I think it's long overdue. One of the comments made around the table tonight, there hasn't been a lot of infrastructure money over the last couple of terms of council. There was infrastructure stimulus money. As a matter of fact, Save on Sound family-wide received $24 million back in 2009, 2010. Infrastructure money is very cyclical in terms of announcements from the province and from the feds, and I don't think for a minute that the province and the feds are going to ignore stimulus funding for recreation infrastructure. I don't think it can go on forever. There are a lot of needs around the province, a lot of aging recreation facilities that I think governments in the future, the provincial elections only three years away, will be campaigning starting again for the next election. It is going to probably take 3 to 5 years, if not more, to get this project done. But the important thing is the motion is before us tonight to adopt a recommendation to see a new pool built in this community once and for all. And I think it's a positive resolution. I have a question of the consultant, if I might. Our existing pool facility, of course, we have the Breaker swim team, John, and we know that they like the water temperatures 80 or 82 degrees, a little bit warmer than maybe some of our seniors like to see the water, and I understand that because it can be a little chilly dipping into the 78 to 80 degree water. But you talk about 2 tanks, John. Could you just briefly explain how the 2 tanks would work with the new facility and the plan, and talk a little bit about water temperatures, if you might? I know we're going out there a little bit, but that's one question I did have.
One of the primary drivers for having 2 tanks rather than a single one is that you can maintain 2 different water temperatures, so that you can have something that is suitable for breakers and people that like to swim laps on the one hand, And in another tank, usually a smaller tank, you have a temperature that is warmer, suitable for aquafit, children's swim programs, learn to swim programs, that sort of thing. There is higher operating cost to have two tanks. To maintain two different temperatures, you really got two different pumping systems, but you take advantage of the shared costs of the overall infrastructure and staffing.
Thank you, John. I think we've had some good discussion. It's probably time for the question then. All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you, John. And the next item on the agenda then is a staff report, and it has to do with the Bruce Power license agreement. And is it you? Yeah. And our CIO, Larry Allison, will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last fall, staff were approached by representatives of Bruce Power who were seeking consent to place an air sampling device in the vicinity of the urban area of Port Elgin. The unit is relatively small and is designed to provide remote air quality information to Bruce Power as part of its off-site monitoring and reporting obligations. All right. So after discussion on potential locations, the town-owned land at the intersection of Mill and Eastwood was identified. Council will recall the discussion with the fire chief during the budget deliberations regarding the desire to establish a small fire training area on the subject property. The site is remote, meets Bruce Power's core criteria for siting, and provides an opportunity for furthering our joint partnership. In exchange for approval of the proposed license agreement permitting Bruce Power to place the infrastructure on the corner of the site, they have agreed to supply and allow the town to have ongoing access to an electrical service large enough to fulfill our need for illumination for the future training facility at no cost. The footprint is very small, 3 meters by 3 meters, and the unit itself is about 2 meters high and is silent. So the proposed location should not pose a negative impact on the community. The proposed term is 21 years less a day, and the detailed documentation is attached, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Then the recommendation is that Council consider a bylaw authorizing the Mayor and Clerk to execute a license agreement with Bruce Power LP respecting the future installation of an off-site air sampling device to be located at 840 Mill Street, Port Elgin. Questions or comments? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am happy to see this occurring. I just wondered about, and I don't think this was in the report, but I was wondering about the possibility of the results being shared with the public more than just at a year-end report. Like, would it be possible to check the results in real time somehow?
Mr. Mayor, we are in fact having discussions with Bruce Power about the extent of information we can get. The preliminary indications are, while certainly not real time, they have committed to some sort of more robust reporting scheme.
If there's nothing further, then all in favor of the recommendation. Opposed, if any. That's carried. There, the next item on the agenda is a staff report, and it has to do with the procedural bylaw, and our clerk, Linda White, will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The procedural bylaw for the town of Saugeen Shores governs the procedures for calling a meeting, the location, and the proceedings within the meetings. The bylaw has been rewritten to provide an updated comprehensive bylaw in accordance with the Municipal Act. The attached procedural bylaw has been circulated for members' comments. The comments received are summarized below in the form of suggestions, which will allow the committee to vote on each suggestion separately. If the committee supports a suggestion, it will become a recommendation that will be incorporated into the final version of the bylaw. So it is my intent tonight to introduce the suggested changes and allow the members, and in particular those members who have made the suggestion, an opportunity to speak to the issue prior to the vote being taken on the proposed changes. So I'll introduce the individual items, and then hopefully the mayor can walk you through the voting of it. So the first suggestion is to change the time of the meeting from the current 7:30 start to 7 p.m. In theory, this would allow for the lengthy meetings to conclude at a reasonable hour and to provide prior to the curfew.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, sorry for interrupting.
Mr. Mayor, I have a suggestion. Given the number of these suggestions from members of council, a number of which are good suggestions, and given the fact that the striking committee has not had the opportunity to take these in and work on them and potentially, take them into account as part of the recommendation we've made, I wonder if council would be willing to refer the bylaw back to the striking committee with the suggestions from council, with direction to the striking committee to look at the broad issues that have been raised by members of council here and attempt to come back with a recommendation that accommodates solutions to those concerns. I think the committee could do that, and perhaps it would be more, might be expeditious. Maybe we could come back with at least a large number of these issues resolved and make for an easier discussion here at council on some of the bigger issues that might be left outstanding. Mr. Mayor, I guess I would make a motion to refer this to the striking committee.
Okay, we have a motion, then I need a seconder. Would you second? Councillor Rich? Yes? Comments to it then?
I actually support the idea, Deputy Mayor. I think it's, when I looked at the number of items to discuss this evening, I'd want about starting our meetings at 7 o'clock to get out of here a half hour earlier, and I talked tonight about open forum. I know Councillor Grace would like to see the 15 minutes before a council meeting is open forum. Those two items alone, I would think, are going to bring a lot of discussion around the table, and we may be, who knows, just on those two items. And I think there's 15 plus items, and I think it would make a whole lot of good sense for a striking committee to take a run at this and then see where it ends up. So I would support that recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would ask that the striking committee, I will support the new motion to refer, and I will ask that the striking committee then number each one of them and say the striking committee is in support of pushing that one forward, or they're opposed to pushing it forward, so that we have some idea that they're not lost. Otherwise we have to bring them up again, because this is a second round of requests. I believe we asked for some of these things. We asked for open forum, and it didn't appear that it was going to be accepted. So if the striking committee can say 1 to 20 and they support 15 of them, then I think the process would go a lot smoother too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Grace.
Mr. Mayor, I just have I support the new motion as well, but I'm just wondering about further comments and the process. Should we then, if we have something that we feel should get more discussion that wasn't mentioned in the proposed version that we have here, is that something that we could just send a note to Clerk White and get that considered? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for the Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, who raised the motion. I understand that the striking committee is a specific section within the procedural bylaw when it comes to striking committees and naming members of certain boards and things. But I'm not truly sure about the jurisdiction of the striking committee to make a recommendation about the whole procedural bylaw, other than it's made up of the 3 senior heads of council. Can you explain that to me? I'm just out of my ignorance, perhaps.
I think, again, the mandate, and we can go back to the original bylaw, I'm not sure. I think that the intent really here is that we're going to try and streamline this process, not losing any opportunity for anybody to add anything. I think we can, there may be some of these things we can include in very easily without having a whole bunch of discussion on it going on. But, I mean, if you want to have them all here tonight, that's another.
No, I'm all for streamlining,
yeah.
And I'm all for consolidating them into one omnibus motion, if you like. I just wasn't sure how I thought the striking committee's mandate was fairly narrow, which was naming people to committees.
No, it's a little broader than that. And
Okay.
I'd have to look at the bylaw to be exact. It's probably here if you want it.
Okay.
Lyndall.
I did.
Anyways. And then I think the intent is to try and streamline it and make sure that none of these points, and even, whatever recommendation comes back to council, then it's still your opportunity to amend or change or vote yes or vote no to. So then I guess the motion to refer back to striking committee, I'll take the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. So the next item then is a... Next item is an Environmental Services and Transportation staff report. It's a capital project for the Goderich Street Light Conduit, and our Director of Public Works, Stuart Doyle, will present.
Thank you. As part of this year's capital budget, new decorative street lights were to be installed, or are to be installed, in parts of the Port Eldon downtown core. I've attached a map there to show the approximate locations of these fixtures. In order to complete this installation, conduit is required to be installed for the wiring system. As discussed at the capital deliberations this winter, the initial plan was to install decorative streetlights between Mill and Elgin and Gustavus and Emma. However, due to infrastructure requirements and efficiencies, the program was altered slightly to its current layout. In addition to the required wiring conduit, staff also included a provisional item for a second conduit for this project to accommodate future irrigation lines south of Green Street. Green Street is where we did put the irrigation well and the control system that's currently in there now. This additional conduit will remain empty until the irrigation system is installed at a later date. The installation of the second conduit at this time is required, as it would be difficult and nearly impossible to install at a future date due to space restraints. I should say very difficult to install with directional drilling. We could do it likely with open cut, however that's not what we really want to do, I don't think. To avoid disruptions to the downtown businesses and planned special events in the vicinity, the project documents stipulate the conduit installation is completed in October. This requirement should allow for sufficient time to install the streetlights prior to the winter season. However, it is a restrictive timeline, and it might flow into next year for the final completion, depending on weather. The installation of the conduits in the downtown core area will disrupt pedestrian traffic and occupy adjacent parking spaces while the work is being completed. Staff will notify the BIA and area businesses of the project prior to commencement. So we did receive two quotes for this project as listed there. The $62,000 budget allocation is half 50-50 from the BIA and the town capital budget. The overall costs associated for the street lighting conduit have been budgeted for and are within the budget amount for the street light installation, as noted there, with just shy of $61,000 for that project. However, to put in the irrigation, the provisional item would require an additional $14,000, or sorry, $15,000, and it's proposed at this time that be allocated from the operating budget, and that we could review it again at the quarterly budget report and answer any questions at that time as well.
Thank you, Stuart. Then the recommendation is that Clearwater Directional Drilling be awarded the contract for Goderich Street Lighting Conduit Installation Project, quotation number 2015-6320-5555, in the amount of $31,931.40 plus applicable HST. Questions or comments? Vice Deputy Mayor Hubert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Director of Public Works. Stuart, it's begs the question when one of the bids is less than half the other bid. Clearwater has worked in Saugeen Shores before, and we have no reason to doubt anything about their service, right?
Their quote was more in line with what we expected.
Yep.
The other, I think, came down to timing of the quote.
Because we should always question when there's such a big discrepancy. I did want to get some clarification from you though about the financial impact. You've got that the budget is $62,000 and it's 50-50. Is that $62,000 62 from us, 62 from them, or 31-31?
31 and 31.
Okay, then when you go down to your chart, you've got streetlight conduit installation about $20,000. How does that match up with the $32,000 for the quote? Are they the same thing?
No, what I tried to explain there, unsuccessfully, I guess, because we did struggle with this, at trying to put this together in a way that made sense, so I apologize. The $31,000 includes the $20,000 for the street lighting conduit and the additional $12,000 or $13,000 for the extra conduit, so it's the two together.
Okay.
So if we wanted to break that out, the recommendation would change to approximately $19,500 for just the street lighting conduit. Did I make that worse?
I have faith.
Okay.
Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm just forgetting things, I guess. Can I be reminded, please, if the existing concrete poles that hold the existing lights are removed under this this project, and when we do the irrigation work, that I'm going to assume, and I'll take advice, that we're going to lift something. We're not going to lift the asphalt on Main Street. We're going to burrow under something. If we're going to do irrigation, are we going to be able to make sure the interlocking brick, the decorative interlocking brick, is reset at that time?
I think the answer to the first question is the poles will be taken out, and I think that you're not going to disturb that interlocking brick. You're boring underneath it. That's correct. So there will be no disturbance to it. Go ahead, Stuart.
We will have to open it up in a few spots to daylight some utilities, or for the most part not. There is no irrigation work here. All we're doing is putting in an empty pipe for future use.
Go ahead.
Just to follow up, as you know, I've walked and talked to Stuart about many of the existing downtown Port Elgin interlocking brick problems, and we're hoping to bring forward a staff report in the future on a block-by-block sidewalk repair program. And I just wanted to make sure we didn't exacerbate the problem when we do this irrigation work. Thank you.
Councillor Mike Matt?
I just want to make a comment. I understand the numbers, and I just I had a comment, Stuart, about the conduit you're installing now. I mean, it's good management practices and good planning, so I commend you for that. I'm not advocating for doing it later because I recommend we do it now. It's a good expense and good time to put conduit in at the time of construction. If it was left to a later date, I'm assuming that conduit charge would be a lot higher than $15,000.
Yeah, so generally we get a base price for drilling, and then there's additional cost for each conduit added to that. So we are seeing a good substantial savings by just adding a conduit. The way the technology works is there's not a lot of extra work to add a second conduit. It's more just a material cost.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No further comments then? All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is Victoria Street, yes. Is the staff report for the Victoria Street accessibility upgrades, and again, Director of Public Works, Stuart Doyle, will present.
Thank you. The Town of Saugeen Shores recently received a $50,000 federal grant from the Enabling Accessibility Fund to complete upgrades at the intersection of Victoria and High Street in Southampton. This project was originally proposed in 2012, however funding at the time was not approved. The town reapplied for the grant opportunity in 2014 based on the same criteria and was successful. The grant had a maximum value of $50,000 or 65% of the total value of the project. The project must be completed by the end of this year. The purpose of the project is to provide a continuous accessible pedestrian walkway between outdoor accessible amenities in the direct vicinity. These include Rotary Park, the Fairy Lake Bandshell, and Bruce County Museum. Additionally, there is churches on these corners, and there is a hospital up the road, so there has been significant investments in the area to do with accessibility. The proposed project aims to improve the accessibility in the area by providing a new sidewalk that includes a reduced grade area where the sidewalk intersects with High Street. Currently, this intersection includes a steep sidewalk, and there is a picture on the next page to illustrate that landing. Since the initial grant application in 2012, the town has developed guidelines and detailed streetscape designs for the Southampton downtown core area. These changes have added additional scrutiny on the design requirements, and there is now a heightened awareness of what the core area is to look like aesthetically, even if the policies have not yet been formally adopted by council. These changes have also resulted in a cost increase to the original budget estimates, as different products have been specified to aesthetically align with the plans. Changes that have affected the budget include the addition of decorative retaining wall, decorative railing system, a wider sidewalk, additional landscaping, and improved concrete treatments at the intersection. In addition, due to the consultation process and the requirements of some of the groups, the tender process was pushed back to ensure all comments were received prior to finalizing the design. Again, we do note that well-timed tenders generally do result in cost savings for the town. Town staff has consulted with the Southampton BIA, the United Church, the Accessibility Advisory Committee on this project, and all have given support for the project as currently designed. To accommodate events at the church, we have selected a date of after September 6th to begin construction. And we will have to remove the stairs of the church, and they've identified that they could use an alternate entrance for that. So again, we received 2 tenders for this project, very close in value at $94,000 and change, and just shy of $99,000. So the current budget allocation includes $78,000, which is $50,000 from the federal government and $28,000 from the future capital reserves. As you can see, the tender work did not include all the work that's identified. The town is going to retain some of the work in-house. So the tender with the applicable HST is $101,000, and the town work would include about $20,000 to bring an overall total of just shy of $121,000. To complete this project as designed, additional funds will be required. It's proposed an additional $45,000 be transferred from the future capital reserves to provide sufficient funds. If council would like to reduce the cost of the project, staff can complete a redesign that would eliminate much of the aesthetic components and just focus on the accessibility aspect of the project.
I'll read the recommendation, and it's recommended that Doug Welsh Construction be awarded the contract for Victoria Street Accessibility Upgrades Project, tender number 2015-6320-5310, in the amount of $94,118.08 plus applicable HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary tender documents. And further, that the over expenditure estimated to be an additional $45,000 be funded from the future capital reserves. Questions or comments? All in favor of the recommendation then? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And is again a staff report and has to do with LAS sewer and water line warranty service. And again, our Director of Public Works, Stuart Doyle, will present.
Thank you. So I've included in the agenda this evening a fairly lengthy report for my standards anyway that includes quite a bit of information on this insurance package. So I'll be quite brief. I'll read over the introduction here at the start, and if there's any questions, please let me know. A new local authority services, LAS, which LAS is a division or was created by AMO, the Associated Municipalities of Ontario. We've used their programs before, and I think we're currently enrolled in 2 of them at this time. They've recently endorsed a sewer and water warranty program that's become available to Ontario municipalities to provide private property owners the opportunity to purchase additional insurance coverage for the exterior sewer and water services. Service Line Warranties of Canada is a I couldn't type this as a tongue twister here. As preferred service provider of LAS, can offer warranty products to residents of Saugeen Shores for their private sewer and water service lines. In Saugeen Shores, ownership of the water and sewer services is a shared responsibility between the town and the private owner. The town is responsible for the services from the main lines to the road to the property line, and the homeowner is responsible for the services from the property line to the building. When the town replaces infrastructure, oftentimes we encounter private infrastructure that is or past its useful life. Many property owners are not aware that they have the responsibility to maintain and repair the sewer and water connections. Unfortunately, this circumstance often leads to private owners contacting the town when an event has occurred looking for assistance in repairing private infrastructure. So we've listed some reasons why sewer and water lines can be affected. On page 2, there is the warranty information, which we go through all the 3 products that is offered by this company. I will note there is a less than 2% claim denial for these above coverages. My understanding is they do not deny claims. It's usually just for non-payment that happens. There is no exclusion clauses. You just have to working services before you sign up. There's marketing that would go along with this that has specific mail-outs 3 times a year for individual products. It would be on the town letterhead if we do endorse this marketing agreement. The annual royalties is 5% to the town based on the sales. So it's not just the sales made that year, it is a cumulative amount. And I would note that if the town in a year or 2 or 3 gets out of this, they would stop selling that coverage in town. They would honor the commitments they currently have, however they would discontinue selling it. So it's completely dependent on if we have a marketing agreement with them. That's the only way they come into town.
Thank you, Stuart. Then the recommendation is that council consider a bylaw to enter into an agreement with Service Line Warranties of Canada Incorporated to provide warranty products to residents of Saugeen Shores for private sewer and water line services. Questions or comments? Start down here. Councillor Grace.
Mr. Mayor, Neil and I attended the session at the county where this program was presented, and I thought it sounded great. And so I think, you know, this is all in Stuart's report, but just to confirm that it's optional, that it was explained to us that you could just have one resident of Saugeen Shores who wants to do it, and they would offer that. We don't have to have a minimum number of people participating. And also it was an important point for me that the program makes a point of using local companies to do the work. So I really think this is a great opportunity for us to provide for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dave Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Director of Public Works. Stu, would this program be available to people who are not connected to public sewer and water?
List of questions I anticipated, and that wasn't one of them. So I did not ask that question. I don't think so, as it is specific to sewer and water laterals. There is a third product that is offered for interior plumbing. I can ask that question and get back to you, though.
Yeah, I would like to know if my own water line, for instance, I've got 200 yards of buried water line. If it froze in the middle of winter, I could certainly use an insurance company to take care of it for me.
My understanding is that the rates are based on a estimated amount, what general setbacks are from the front of a property line in that area. So I'm not sure 200-foot water line would fit into that, but I can certainly find out.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
I just had really a quick question. I don't see there's really a downside to doing this, offering as an opportunity. I just wondering, Stuart, the company you referred to in the report, Service Line Warranties of Canada, is this a program that's been going for a long time? Is this idea relatively new? What's the success of the program? Just give us a little history.
Yeah. So this company is a subsidiary of a very large company out of the States. Currently, they have over 200. I'm not sure in the United States if it's county or municipalities and it's a similar acronym to AMO for the United States. I can't think of it right now. It could be counties of them. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. So they have a service arrangement with a similar entity in the United States that again is a lot of backup, and it's quite a large company with a good reputation.
No further questions then. All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is the staff report, and it has to rooftop solar panel feed-in tariff requests, and our Manager of Development Services and CBO, Bart Toby, will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Ontario's Fit-in Tariff program was developed for the province to encourage and promote greater use of renewable energy sources, including onshore wind, water power, renewable biomass, biogas, landfill gas, and solar photovoltaic PV for electric generating projects in Ontario. Landowners may apply under the FIT program to install and operate renewable energy projects, and in return will be paid electricity delivery pursuant to the contracts with the province. If the province selects a project submitted under the FIT program, the applicant will be required to install the approved project and begin producing electricity. Projects which obtained the support of local councils will be given priority points, which it is understood will prioritize approvals of projects through the program. If supported, council is required to express their support in the form of a motion provided by the FIT program, copies which are attached. Saugeen Shores has received a request from Solar Panel Network, otherwise known as SPN LP12, to install a 230 kW rooftop-mounted solar panel system at 140 Gray Street, South, Southampton Care Centre. We've also received requests from the Green Energy Cooperative in Ontario, otherwise known as SANGLP, to install a 450 kW rooftop-mounted solar panel system at its properties 155 Ivings Drive, 164 and 180 and 794 Waterloo Street and 1199 Goddard Street. The maps containing this report show all the locations being proposed. Staff have reviewed the proposal and have no objections to the proposal, and in particular, the Fire Chief has stated there are no issues with the installation of the roof-mounted panels. If the projects are approved, however, staff require notification of the construction start date to allow the Fire Chief to appropriately plan potential responses to the facilities and conduct regular fire inspections following installation. The developer will also be required to submit all application documents for a building permit.
Thanks, Bart. The recommendation is that Council consider passing the attached motions in support of Solar Power Network's request to install a 230 kilowatt rooftop-mounted solar panel system at 140 Gray Street, South, and in support of the Green Energy Cooperatives of Ontario's request to install a 450 kilowatt rooftop-mounted solar panel system at 554 Ivings Drive, 1199 Goddard Street, 764, 780, and 784 Waterloo Street. Questions or comments? All in favor of the recommendation then? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item is staff report, and it has to do with pool enclosure bylaw. And again, our manager of development services and chief billing official will present. Bart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All pools need to be safely enclosed in Saugeen Shores to prevent unintentional injury or drowning. Currently, we administer a straightforward bylaw which requires pools to be fenced with a fence capable of preventing persons from wandering into pools. Fences must be at least 1.2 meters in height and require other construction standards to be met. What the current bylaw is lacking is principally some clarification on secondary provisions outlining current practice of the town on the town applications. The proposed approach, while current bylaw only has 6 provisions, the proposed bylaw is expanded to provide greater clarity and explanation so that the pool enclosures are adequately constructed. In order to ensure use throughout the bylaw are not vague or ambiguous, standard definitions are provided to describe special terms used throughout the bylaw. For instance, various elements of gate systems are described to ensure the type of access through the pool enclosures is constantly and effectively constructed throughout the Saugeen Shores. Furthermore, clarifying diagrams and sketches are provided throughout the bylaw to assist in interpretation of special terms used in the bylaw. Provisions of the existing bylaw which regulate the height and materials used to construct fences are carried over in the draft. These standards address the minimum safety needs. Finally, the draft bylaw outlines application requirements for landowners to satisfy prior to receiving permits for pool enclosures. Application requirements are not provided in the current bylaw.
Thank you, Bart. Then the recommendation that Council consider passing the pool enclosure bylaw to regulate fencing around pools in Saugeen Shores. Questions or comments? Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Bart, can I be correct in assuming or generalizing that the draft bylaw is going to broaden the spectrum of what a fence around a pool enclosure might look like? Because as we know, as time goes on, there's all sorts of different types of fences and materials and looks and designs that are out there these days. So is this going to give people more choice than they have currently under the bylaw as it's written?
I think this will give you a clearer choice. So this will give you a little more explanation of what the expectations are and the types of fences, and provide a little better direction for individuals who want to put a fence around their pool. whereas the old bylaw is a lot more ambiguous. This one's a lot more specific.
Okay.
Any further questions? All in favor of the recommendation then? Opposed, if any? That's carried. So the next item on the agenda is a staff report, a planning and development staff report. It has to do with the sign bylaw. And again, our manager of development services and chief building official, Bart Toby, will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further to the Committee of the Whole meeting of June 8th, 2015, there were a number of additional revisions to the draft sign bylaw. A copy of the draft sign bylaw was attached, highlighting the additional revisions made since the previous Committee of the Whole meeting. The additional changes are not considered substantive in nature, and staff believe they would not impact the amendments made in response to the previous dialogue with the BIA and the Chamber of Commerce. Some additional comments were received from council members related to the removal of non-compliant signs or ways of addressing non-compliant signs. In response, we have had our solicitor review the draft bylaw, and she has offered additional edits on non-compliant signage, how alteration may be made to non-compliant signage, and advised that the town may not force any owner of non-compliant signs to remove them or otherwise seek further permission for continued use. Our solicitor edits are shown in red in the attached draft for your information. In summary, a specific number of other more substantial requests or modifications to the draft have been received from council members. Staff have identified a number of these such requests for the committee deliberation, and direction is required as follows.
Okay, then the recommendation is that council consider passing the proposed sign bylaw to prohibit and regulate the erection and maintenance of signs, advertising devices, awnings, and canopies in the town of Saugeen Shores. Any questions or comments to this? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. In the previous bylaw, it was in the current bylaw, it's my understanding that the chance that we had to address really bad signs was when there was a change of ownership of the property. Are you saying that the lawyer has indicated that if a sign's up there and it's an illegal sign, that even if there's a change of ownership, we can't do something about that? Is that what? Okay, so let the TV audience know he shook his head no.
Sorry.
No. Anyway, so the I applaud the energy in the revisions that sort of pick up on occupancy as opposed to the other way we looked at it. I would really like to very clearly see, though, that there is an opportunity when there's a sign that is not matching the bylaw anymore, that when there's a change of ownership or a change of occupancy of a particular property, that we have a chance to do something about that sign. So that's one of my comments. I also really applaud that there are a number of items in here that are quite direct and distinct. One being no billboards. I like that. That's a good thing. It was my comment in the list of items here about the maximum height should be 2.5. It doesn't matter who it is. I don't agree at all with singling out one particular type of business and giving them a higher sign. Let it be 2.5 across the board, and if somebody wants a higher sign, they can go after a variance and convince whether it's council or the Planning Advisory Committee of Adjustment, convince them that a higher sign is warranted. I don't believe we need higher signs. I think there's creativity out there. We're not a big community. We don't have major streets of 6 lanes across. Higher signs are not necessary. So I applaud the 2.5 height restriction, but I think it should be for everybody. And as a matter of fact, I just recently drove down to London and I looked at signs all the way down Highway 4, and a number of communities have restricted, obviously, the height because there's some obvious inroads in reducing things down. All you have to do is look in Southampton, too, with what we've done with the new Subway sign and the car wash sign and Tim Hortons. You can see how lower signs make it fit into a neighborhood. And some of the places that have higher signs, like this gas station thing makes no sense to me because there's signage on gas station structures that give it away. The physical layout of a gas station gives it away. So it was my comment very specifically about 2.5, do not single out one particular type of business. I don't think that the sign by law is finished yet. I'm willing to support what's here. I'm not happy about the definition of a gas station getting something higher. I think we got a bigger issue with gas stations that we need to address in a different way, in that we've reached the saturation point, particularly in Port Elgin, and there's ways in a bylaw that you can set up that a particular type of occupancy has reached capacity. That's a different bylaw, though. But I would like to be very specifically informed, though, and the community informed of the stuff that's not good out there. And with what we're changing, will be some things that are okay right now, but we're changing, and so they wouldn't fit in with the new bylaw, so that's okay for a while. But I want to be convinced that there will come a time, change of ownership, change of occupancy, that we have a chance to get rid of those signs. So I don't know how others feel about the 2.5 meter thing, but I don't think we should single out gas stations and give them a higher sign. That makes no sense to me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor.
I'd like a point of clarification, I guess, Mr. Mayor, and maybe you could ask or maybe you can answer. My understanding is if a sign was erected during the current bylaw, so from when the current bylaw was dated and passed, and it's not legal conforming with the current bylaw, and it's not legal conforming with the proposed bylaw once we pass it, it's legal not conforming and it will have to be removed. Is that a correct statement?
I think Bart can answer that, but I think the answer, any sign that's legal, will be legal, non-conforming to this bylaw, can stay. And we have no, the lawyer says we have no, only, and it's in section 2.3 here.
I said it
Loss
wrong.
of legal.
I said it wrong. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I said it wrong. If it's non-conforming in the current bylaw and it continues to be non-conforming in the new bylaw, then it has to be removed. Is that a correct statement?
Staff may pursue at any time signs that are not in conformance with the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. So I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize. And I just wanted to make sure I was clear, and I wasn't. So there are a number of signs. There are tens and possibly hundreds of signs that are non-conforming today and will be non-conforming after the passing of this bylaw. Will we receive a list of those signs that we will be asking for them to be removed?
I would say no, unless staff is specifically directed by this committee to go out and do an inventory of all the signs and find out which ones are illegal and which aren't. And I think that's a pretty time-consuming thing. But if that's what we want, we can chase all down these people. I'm sure we're going to have some happy people in this community.
Mr. Mayor, we have received a number of complaints related to signs this spring. So our bylaw staff are chugging away at a list of about 25 or so. We do have a response based on a complaint basis kind of level of service with respect to the sign bylaw at the moment, unless there's something egregious that is put on public property that we become aware of.
So for follow-up then, I have a couple more questions. I think the double standard that we end up providing the community and the blind eye approach is wrong. And so I will be asking if I'm allowed to say and state that signs that are currently on fences They're non-conforming in the current bylaw. They're non-conforming in the proposed bylaw. They should be removed. And there's a number that I have outlined, so I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to pursue them. I wanted an opportunity to have some other method, some method that compromised, that allowed some petition for some change. And it's not there. And I went to staff twice. I've asked all of you to consider it, and I've put it in here, and the lawyer says my suggestion is in error. So be it. But I still believe telling everyone to take these illegal signs down is not necessarily the right answer. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to talk about 2.5 feet. And we have some strip malls, I should call them that, where there are 10 businesses. And if we restrict them to 2.5 feet meters, 2.5 meters, then what we've done is made it impossible for them to put their business on a roadside pylon sign. So what I wanted to do was take away the opinions and work with a scientific principle, a safety standard, that engineering standards say that if an occupant of a vehicle is driving at 50 kilometers per hour, which is the speed limit, and they're required to see a pylon sign or a ground sign, how high should it be and how much should the square meters be for the sign to be of any use and to be safe for the driver to take their eyes off the road to see the sign? And I believe that we could ask for that. We haven't. So I asked for at least a consideration to allow a number of our signs have landscaping underneath them, and they don't even start for 1 meter off the ground. So they're only going to be 1.5 meters high after that if we stick with the 2.5 meter limit. So I asked for at least the bottom of the sign to commence at 1 meter off the ground. And so these concerns I've brought to everyone's attention. I met with staff twice, and the second time I met with them, I brought along, like I said I would, at least 10 pages of information. I have since found a number of other things that are different from one bylaw to another, and I'm asking for them to be changed. I'd like to go through one point at a time and have a good discussion about it. Thank you.
I only have one small comment. It's in the real estate signs portion where it says that a real estate sign should be taken down within 30 days of a property being sold. I would like to request that change to closed, because I think that a property can be sold and then it falls through, and then I think that's unfair to the person who's trying to advertise to sell their home.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As our Vice Deputy Mayor was traveling to London, I was traveling to Toronto on Sunday to watch the Blue Jay game. Tough loss. But I also looked at the signs on the way to Toronto, and I look at a 2.5 meter restriction at 8.2 feet. I looked at the gas stations on the way down. That's about a foot taller than Councillor Myatt. And I just, I look at a 4 meter restriction we're putting in at 13.12 feet, which 4 meters equals. I think that the recommendation from staff is a pretty solid recommendation. And I think the 2.5 meter across the board is going to probably welcome lots of minor variance applications for a planning advisory committee, and that's okay. I'm on the planning advisory committee. I don't mind listening to those requests, but I don't think restricting signs to 2.5 meters across the board makes any sense in my view. And I like the 2.5 meter. I rather like the 1 meter that Councilor Minaj is talking about, where the starting point is 1 meter and then adding the 2.5 meter to it. In addition to gas station signs, lowering it to 4 meter was 6 meter, I believe. And I'd be happy with the 13.1 feet, although I think gas stations, I think we're probably going to get some applications through the minor variance to the Planning Advisory Committee for that. So I can support 2.5 meter and the 4 meter. But I know there's lots of other things to discuss with it. I'm just wondering how many we're going to get through this evening, but that would be my comment on the pylon signs, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think first we should just be clear. I think Bart has identified it in his report that these recommendations or the content of this bylaw, particularly with regard to pylon signs and the gas station signs, has been lifted directly out of the district design guideline process. So we have that process, which was a consultative process, a few years old, granted, but a process where we went to the public and asked for their advice on what the various districts ought to look like and how signage ought to be treated. And so that was a solid process. And then on top of that, we've really had a year-long process now of consultation on these subjects where we've directly engaged the business community in particular with regard to this signage. And we've received endorsements from the Chamber of Commerce, the BIAs, for this content. So the representative bodies of business in the municipality, as well as the public at large through the district design guideline process, have had a crack at the bylaw and have found it to be satisfactory from their perspective. It's important to note that whatever restrictions we put in place here, and I think it's been alluded to, but it's important to be clear about it, 4 meters, 2.5 meters, what these are not really, we're not saying that you can't build a sign taller than that or at a different dimension than that. What we're saying is if you want to build a sign different than that, an additional process is required, a public process. You have to come before a body, in this case the Committee of Adjustment. You have to make your case as to why this is a minor variance or variance that's minor in nature, meet some criteria, and if you can convince the committee of that, then you can have the sign that's bigger. But what's been requested of us, and it's not just through the district design guideline process, but at this podium and through letters over the past few years, has been that some of the signs that we have been approving have been too tall. That's what we've heard. We've heard that pretty clearly, from the public, this response to that, it says, okay, so be it. Some of the signs maybe that have been okay before are not what the community standard is, or don't meet the community standard. So we set the target lower, we set it more restrictive, we force them to go through a community process, the Committee of Adjustment process, get approval. That way it's a more robust process and the public has a chance to have a say. So I think it's a strong recommendation and puts us in a good position to regulate this process in a way that conforms to the community standard, whatever that is at the time. But I think I have a good sense today that where we're at today is not where we need to be. And so it's been a strong, and I guess just more broadly than just on pylon signs, I think it's been a strong process, a robust process, and I think I am reluctant to tinker at this stage with the document that's been produced because we've gone through that process. We've gone out to all these people. We've gotten endorsements. We have now a document which is strongly supported in a number of different ways. And I think that I hate to put at risk that support or to challenge in any way. I think the best thing for us to do is to approve the bylaw, put it in action, and see how it goes, and we can always revisit it if things are not turning out the way we want them to. And just also, finally, I guess, with regard to enforcement, it's important to note, I think it's important to be clear that these bylaws that we pass here are not the only thing that stands between us and anarchy on signs or anything else, right? They're a guideline, a control. They're a backstop, if you will, so that when situations arise throughout the community where somebody takes it a little too far, where somebody does something a little offside maybe, where we can go back to the document and say this is the community standard. And we send our enforcement officer and they clarify that and we come back to the standard. If there are scenarios occurring across the municipality where there are non-conforming signs and they don't raise a concern or they don't merit a complaint, then if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to see it, did the tree actually fall? Is it that critical that we that we rally we marshal some sort of proactive response troop to go out and enforce these bylaws. I don't think so. I think the key thing we need to do is to provide the backstop, give the document to the public to say, here's what the community standard is, here's what you can fall back on, and if a real estate agent decides to go out and put out 1,000 signs, well, we send out the bylaw enforcement officer and say, here's the community standard. This is what you're supposed to do. Let's take it back to this level. So, I guess all that to say that I'm content with the bylaw, and I hope to see us either voted up or down this evening, and I hope that it doesn't require us to go around and around too long to do it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I think, very briefly, Diane, I think we've had enough discussion on this, so I think we're going to call the vote shortly.
I just want to come back to this isolating out one particular kind of business. Enabling a gas station to have a higher sign than a business right next door. If you look at their sign, logo, price of gas, it seems though that these higher signs that they want enable them to put up, premium coffee, whatever. If a gas station was right next door to a restaurant, if the restaurant was required to deal with 2.5 meters, they can't, they can have their logo there and, whatever else they want to put on it, but they don't have the ability to list their products. That's what the higher sign for the gas station is all about. I don't think that that's fair, that particular type of business is being given preferential treatment. Their signs, they should be held to the same standard as other businesses and get creative with them. And, I'm really struggling now with how to vote because I think that that's very unfair to other businesses in this community that could be right next door to a 4-meter high sign, and they don't have that same ability.
Thank you. Councillor Minaj.
I just need clarification as to the process, the official process, that somebody in the community, me, can launch a complaint and ask for non-conforming signs to be removed. Can I get that process? How is that done? Just a phone call? Is it an email? Do I use the e-service request?
The e-service request is preferred.
Okay, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. No,
I'm not going to debate any further about what's being recommended.
Enough debate on.
I also think we need to vote on it, but I just have one question. I do have a question about the Bruce County design guidelines. Could someone around the room just clarify for me who wrote the guidelines, and was it a municipal or a county level, and what input did we have, the former council, into the Bruce County design guidelines? Because we've made a lot of reference to it with the redesign. So who wrote that? Who wrote those guidelines?
It was Corbin Design that did it. It was a corporation that the Bruce County engaged that came to the county and held public meetings in many municipalities, numerous public meetings to develop those guidelines.
You're talking about the signage strategy?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's different.
I was wondering who wrote the design guidelines. I knew Corbin wrote the signage strategy.
It was Bruce County Planning. Again, it was after some extensive public meetings and consultations in the community, asking people, getting working groups together and asking them what they thought.
Okay.
Okay? Sorry, I misunderstood your first question there, Mike. Well, maybe my head's a little foggy too. I've had a lot of signs and anyways, I think we're ready for this. I think we're ready for the question on this recommendation, unless there's any amendments to it. So if there's none, then I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of the recommendation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. So we move on now to the next item on the agenda is Community Services, Parks and Recreation Staff Report. It has to do with the Southampton Arts School Agreement, and our Director of Community Services, Jane Jagielowski, is going to present.
Thank you. What I'm presenting to you this evening is a 10-year agreement with the Southampton Arts School, the Southampton Arts Society for the Southampton Arts School, which is right beside the Town Hall, for a 10-year agreement renewal. As we all know, the Southampton Society provides a desirable service in Saugeen Shores, and it's certainly a recognized amenity by our citizens and our visitors. The financial impact remains at $1 for the term of the lease agreement, and the Arts Society is responsible for all the telephone charges, interior maintenance of the building, and agrees to pay directly all costs related to the running of the facility.
Thank you, Jane. Then the recommendations of the council: consider passing a bylaw to authorize the lease agreement between the town of Saugeen Shores and the Southampton Arts Society for the leasing of the Southampton Art School for a period of 10 years, commencing July the 1st, 2015, and expiring on June the 30th, 2025. Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The next item is communications petitions for your information. There's 4 items there. There's source water protection minutes, Southampton BIA minutes, a letter from the Ministry of Transportation on a new regulation on off-road vehicle use, and a letter from the town of South Bruce on industrial solar field installations. Comments to any of those? Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment with regards to the Ministry of Transportation off-road vehicle use correspondence that we received. There was also some correspondence came to the police services advising them on the changes to the laws that are going to take effect on July the 1st. And it's good to see that what the Ontario government has done is recognize, expanded the definition of off-road vehicles, where it used to be ATVs, to a single rider ATV, and it caused many problems in many other municipalities other than ours, where people were buying more elaborate two-up and side-by-side and sometimes four-seater all-terrain vehicles. So the UTV guideline is one that I welcome, and I think at some point in the near future we'll need to update the language in our current ATV bylaw from 2009 to reflect the new terminology that's being used, which is UTV, OFV, ORV, off-road vehicle, sorry, ORV. Thank you.
Another acronym. Yeah, I think the regulation just came into force here in the last month, so I think it's reasonable that we can have staff look at our bylaw and see whether it conforms or not in the next little while. So, if nothing else, then we have reports of department heads. There's 3 items there. One's about the 40th anniversary celebration of Centennial Pool. If you want to speak to it briefly, Jane.
I think a majority of you in the room will be getting something from staff as the groundswell starts, but there's something in your mailboxes, and the big event is for the reunion on Friday, July the 17th, so hopefully you'll be able to attend.
The other one you may want to speak to, that's quite an accomplishment for our community and some of the people in our community and for our director there.
Yeah, absolutely. The users of the pool, our lifeguard club has certainly done us proud once again. They are the Canadian Pool Life-Saving Championships, and there was 20 clubs that competed, over 160 athletes in Brantford last weekend, and they came out in first place, which is a tremendous feat for them. And just to add to that, too, on the weekend, we had the juniors in Owen Sound, and they came second out of 14 teams, so they're certainly doing us proud.
And one further one, I don't know what's on Ferry Lake, if you want to mention anything about it.
Yeah, I just wanted I wanted staff to be aware that, or I wanted council to be aware that staff are certainly working on the issue with the Ferry Lake. Certainly we don't like the look of it either. We've been working closely with M&R. Last year we did as well, and we continue to do it again this year, trying to determine what the growth is on there. There was a sense it was algae. It's not an algae, it's actually a plant vegetation. So I'm working with the Ontario Invading Species Awareness Program to assist us with getting rid of the growth that's in there right now. So hopefully they'll be bringing forward another report to use to indicate our process moving forward.
Thank you very much. That is the end of our agenda, so a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Mayette, Dave Mayette, all in favor? We're adjourned and we'll reconvene in 10 minutes.